On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, we've got the People's Insider, Jake Fischer of Bleacher Report. He's been reporting all summer long on the goings-on in the league and especially the Kevin Durant sweepstakes, and we dig into the status of the KD conversations. Will this draw out into the season? Will the Nets just say screw it and bring Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving back? We also talk about the difficult challenges, but not impossible challenge, that is getting information out of the Toronto Raptors. Plus, where is the league going when it comes to the trade market? It seems totally out of whack right now with a number of picks flying around and all these potential offers for guys like Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Durant, the deal we just saw for Rudy Gobert. Will there be a course correction? We'll talk about those questions and more with Jake Fischer of Bleacher Report on today's episode of Locked On Raptors.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1221 of Locked On Raptors for Friday, July the 22nd? Yeah, that's what it is. Thanks for being here. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter as always, at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked On Raptors, and you can follow the podcast on all your favorite podcast apps for free. You can also go and subscribe on YouTube for the low, low price of On the House as well. It's much appreciated when you take the time to do that and support the show. It's a free podcast. This is the way you support it, and that is very, very, very much appreciated, and it takes no time at all. So please do it. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day, as always, and thanks for being here for what is a very fun episode, as we have Jake Fischer of Bleacher Report, of course, the author of Built to Lose, his book about how tanking in the NBA changed the league forever. Jake's the best, and he has been doing killer work all summer long, reporting on the league and the various goings-on for Bleacher Report. He just simply rocks, and we had a great chat today about where the Kevin Durant thing sits right now. Where do the Raptors sort into it all? Are they even that inclined to put their best offer on the table, considering what they have built for themselves here? Plus, we get into some other bigger questions about the Raptors and trying to get information out of a team that is notoriously tough to get information from, and some bigger picture questions about the trade market in the NBA. Without further ado, let's get to it with Jake Fischer of Bleacher Report. It's a great time. Have fun. All right, joining me now on Locked On Raptors is the People's Insider from Bleacher Report, from the wonderful Please Don't Aggregate This podcast on Call-In, is Jake Fischer. Jake, how's it going, man?
Hey, man. How you doing? Thanks for the kind intro.
I'm happy to have you, man. I'm really thrilled. I think you've been doing killer work this offseason, and it's been really cool that you're just like happy to share what you got with the people. It's fantastic. So we're going to do some of that today as it relates to, of course, the Toronto Raptors and the Kevin Durant saga, which seems to have quieted down. I know the whole league's on vacation right now, so that might be part of it. But also, it seems like the Nets are in no rush to move on from KD unless they're going to get the King's ransom they're asking for. It seems as though Scotty Barnes is at the table from reporting from all over the place, and I think that's probably the right move if you're the Toronto Raptors. But where do things stand right now, Jake, with the KD negotiations? Do you see this now going into the new season? And where do the Raptors kind of fall into all of this as a team that's never really been stated as a desired destination of KD, but has obviously been lurking, as some of the reporting has suggested, and obviously has the package potentially to woo the Nets if they put all their sort of the cards on the table?
Yeah, I think, for a while now, after the initial weekend when Nets people kind of went dark and went in the hole and gathered around the war room table and were looking for offers around the league, it's been pretty clear from the get-go, honestly, that there isn't an offer that's coming right now or coming anytime soon that's going to meet the Nets' lofty asking price. There are people from other teams that I've spoken with who are, in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes, if you will, that are comparing his situation to Kawhi Leonard back in San Antonio in 2018 and looking at him and saying, well, the Spurs wanted, this, that, and that, and they only got DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a first-round pick from Masai and the Raptors. And I think that's how a lot of these teams are operating right now. This could, that could mean things pick up as everyone comes back from vacation, as we get closer to media day on September, I think it's 26th. But for the time being, Nets people have been saying, throughout the summer, we don't have to trade this guy. And if there's no offer that comes, and the Rudy Gobert trade that at first seemed to benefit Brooklyn in that, this is, what Rudy Gobert went for. So what's Kevin Durant going to have to go for? It might have actually kind of hurt the Nets in some degree, being that it's the price for a superstar has now gotten so high. I don't know if any team is going to be willing to pay that price, being that how much are they going to have left with KD, to actually go compete and keep him happy and having him want to remain there for the remainder of this contract, just like Brooklyn's kind of struggling to do. So it is a thorny situation. And, until a team really does present an offer that's going to make the Nets really gather and have to think about it, or until Kevin Durant gives some type of messaging that I'm not going to be playing for you this season. Like I'm gonna pull up Simmons. I'm gonna make a stink. We got to get something done. It's gonna have to take one. I mean, maybe there's another variable, but I think it's gonna have to be one of those two events that actually stems a Kevin Durant trade happening anytime soon.
Yeah, and the sort of idea of the out of whack trade market, I want to get to a little bit later, but I guess the way I've kind of read the situation based on all the reporting that's come out from you and others is that like it does feel like a bit of the whole league's maybe going to try to call the Nets bluff on, are you actually going to bring these guys back and like try to run it back? And I guess I'm curious, like, where are you on the idea of that and like how viable that would even be? We've heard Joe Tsai say that like he just would rather, own a team that plays hard and wins 44 games, get back to the Kenny Atkinson, Halcyon days of the Nets or whatever, as opposed to whatever the deal's been the last couple years. Like, do you think they'll actually just ride this all the way through and say, you know what, he's got 4 years left, he's coming back, even though it seems like kind of a noxious stew of personalities and emotions going on, that if you were to bring it back, it could just be like a worse version of the disastrous Nets we've already seen?
Yeah. Well, when the James Harden stuff started popping up in January, and I started making calls about that whole situation, and even before that, when you'd started, I'd started hearing rumblings, back in the fall of last year about when KD came back from the Olympic run in the offseason and he was ready to go win a title, and Harden was a little bit out of shape. And Harden was, having his quote unquote hamstring injuries and he was sitting games. Like I was told from many people around Brooklyn, around Kevin Durant, that KD wasn't thrilled. Aren't we hoopers? Like, aren't we here to go play and to win? So that's my only knowledge to work with here to guess about how he'll approach still being on the team. So I'm expecting if he's in Brooklyn, I mean, again, this is a complete guess, right? Because I haven't talked to KD about it, and we're sitting here recording this on July 22nd, which will be way different than September 22nd. But it doesn't seem like it's in his profile to sit, to cause a fuss, to try to force his way out other than what he's done so far. So I mean, the Nets have done things like trading a first round pick for Royce O'Neal. They went out and convinced TJ Warren to sign a minimum deal with them. Not convinced, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
They do not want to trade Joe Harris, from everything I've heard. Like the notion that he's a salary dump is not real. Everyone from top of management to lower level Nets coaches, when the Nets got swept by the Celtics, they were all saying, what if we had Joe Harris, too? Like he's a big piece that they're all looking forward to getting back. I really do believe that Brooklyn management are hoping that when there is no deal on the table, KD will look at the Nets roster and say, this is my best chance to win a title anyway. We've still got Kyrie here, and who knows how good Ben Simmons can be if he gets right. Joe, Seth Curry, Patty Mills is back, Royce O'Neal, TJ Warren, Nick Claxton, everyone's expecting to take a leap. So I think on paper that's still one of the most dangerous lineups in the Eastern Conference. So the Nets, I think, really are, it might be a negotiating tactic, but I think they're also kind of bluffing themselves. Like they're kind of hoping that the standpoint will ultimately just work itself out and Kevin Durant will be back.
All right, we've got more coming up with Jake Fischer digging into more of the KD stuff and the far-reaching ramifications of the bazillion picks flying around in all these superstar trades. We'll get to that in just 1 second. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at betonline.net, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your sports betting needs. You can find your favorite sports and events at the #1 source for odds, lines, and games. It is BetOnline. They have reviews, they have injury reports, they got everything you need to be the informed wager, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, hockey, combat sports, esports, even golf. It's all there for you. You can even put down money on like weird European basketball leagues. Yes, I've done it. It's fun. It's weird. I lost money because I didn't know what I was doing, but it's there. I did not take the advice of BetOnline and use all of their wonderful resources to be the informed wagerer when I put money down on Megalex to win a game, but you can do it and put down money with an informed lean, and maybe you're going to win yourself some cash. BetOnline.net continues to be the top online resource, that is, for all your sports wagering info. Head to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline.net, where the game starts. And let's get back to it now, the conversation with Jake Fischer of Bleacher Report. Fair enough. And I guess that sort of leads into where the Raptors are in terms of like their desire to put all the chips on the table. I don't know if there's ever been any reporting, it doesn't sound like there has, of like an official offer having been made to the Nets by the Raptors. I would assume if there is something, it's definitely doesn't have Scotty Barnes. I would guess it probably doesn't have Pascal Siakam because like Siakam ideally is sort of the perfect fit with KD that you ideally try to pair him with. And so that leaves kind of like the backup offer, right? Like the OG plus Trent. Maybe you throw in Precious Achiuwa as a sweetener and all the picks. And, I don't blame the Nets for saying that's not enough if that, in fact, is the offer, which, again, I don't think it has been reported or anything. It's just sort of reading tea leaves. But where do you think the Raptors are if there is an offer out there? Like, share if you feel you're at liberty to do so. But, do you think that they're kind of in a position where, like, that's if there is an offer on the table, it's kind of like take it or leave it. We're fine with the team we have if you won't take the sort of low ball offer that we have out there? Or do you think they're motivated to potentially, if a bidding war does start to turn up a little closer to the season, maybe start to entertain the Pascals or even the Scotty of it all, if that comes to pass closer to the season starting?
Yeah. I know definitively at this point that the Raptors have not made their best potential offer to Brooklyn. That's really all I can say. I don't know if they're going to. Doesn't seem like they will.
Sure.
I think to your point, like the Raptors were not necessarily preparing for Kevin Durant to become available on the trade market, right? I'm sure, I'd started to hear rumblings about Phoenix and Miami back in May, right? So I'm sure people at the highest levels of NBA front offices were getting those rumblings too. But, is it really going to happen? Are we really going to have a chance? Is the deal really going to be done? I am pretty positive that Toronto's personnel are bullish on what they're building there and feel good about taking a next step, believe in Scotty Barnes as being a really critical piece that could help open up a new title window with the remnants of the last one, and not to be dismissive of Fred VanVleet or Pascal Siakam, because they're remnants, but they're fixtures, right? Like they're absolute franchise cornerstones. So
they're the new Kyle and DeMar.
Exactly. They're the new Kyle and DeMar. So I think the Raptors feel very confident in their standing, which has, to me, been reflected by the fact that, like I said at the top of this answer, I know pretty definitively the Raptors have not made an offer to Brooklyn that would really rank anywhere near the best offers that the Nets, at least from my last conversation with someone about it in Las Vegas. And if things changed, I think we would have heard about it.
Sure. It makes a lot of sense. So this is more of an inside baseball question for you, Jake. The Raptors are this team that's been they've built up this reputation that like they don't give up anything. They're the one team that like Woj and Shams can't get their draft pick, even if it's like the 33rd pick. Like you find out on TV who the Raptors took. They have this sort of like veneer of, they just don't leak anything. There's no way that can be totally true, right? Like I'm curious, like from your perspective, you're talking to lots of people around the league, you have connections everywhere. Like, are the Raptors actually what they are kind of billed to be, as this like fortress of information you can't access, or is it a little easier to kind of understand what's going on? Maybe just from like the people who are talking to people within the Raptors you have contacts with, maybe that's the way in. But I've always been fascinated with whether the Raptors are actually what they sort of profess themselves to be as this leak-free operation.
There are definitely teams like Orlando, Toronto, OKC, San Antonio who operate with, we are not going to have leaks here. We are not going to blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean it's impossible to find out information about that franchise. And that doesn't mean that that team doesn't have, like, there are people with Toronto that I have relationships with. I know Raptors fans like to say I have no one connected to the franchise. That's not. Are those people calling me and telling me everything they're trying to do? No. But also, the Raptors are one of the more active teams in the league. Like, just historically, they make calls, they talk about ideas. Like, the reason the Raptors are in the news a lot in terms of, the potential transactions that could occur. Look back at the Goran Dragic situation, right? Like, the Raptors made that sign and trade with Kyle Lowry and got back Goran Dragic. The deal took, I forget how many days, but it took a while to become official because the Raptors were calling around the league and trying to see if anyone wanted to go get Goran Dragic from them. So I heard about that from a lot of different teams. As Goran Dragic. So, when you put out, the Raptors are trying to expand this, whatever, and it doesn't happen because no one wants to meet the Raptors asking price, I see fans say, oh, well, that's wrong, and we're not actually doing that. But no, like, just because a deal doesn't get done doesn't mean it wasn't discussed. So, you look forward to last year's trade deadline. Like, then the Raptors changed their tune. They weren't trying to sell Goran Dragic. They were trying to use him as an expiring contract with a first-round pick to go and get better. So they had talks all around the league with Atlanta about Danilo Gallinari. I remember they talked to Dallas about Kristaps Porzingis. Like, the way it's been described to me from people who have worked with the Raptors is that what that front office likes to do is they like to put all their options on the board and then pick their best one. So the Thad Young one, I didn't hear about, I'll be honest, until it happened. But I definitely heard that Thad Young was being discussed. Like, you get these pieces of info out. Like, it's not like impossible to find out what a team is doing if you're smart about looking at all the aspects on the board, because there are agents involved. There are, players, people around them. And I hate using the word camp. Like, I remember being younger. Like, that's just the easiest way to do it, because there's a trainer and a dietitian and an agent or a brother or an uncle or, a college coach who's really involved, a high school coach who's really involved. Like, for all it's not the same for every person, obviously. But, like, you're just a guy, Sean. I'm just a guy. Like, if you make it as a big-time person, like, you were going to take people with you, and there are going to be people who are confidants of yours. Like, it's not – I'm going through some contract stuff myself right now. And, like, I'm trying not to talk too much to other people about it because I don't want it to get out there. But, like, I know it's going to get out there because it's a small industry. So, yeah, like, are the Raptors conscious of trying to not have their info, under my byline, under other people's bylines on Twitter? Yeah, but it doesn't mean you're going to be successful at completely shutting things out. Like, the Thunder, was able to figure out that they were trying to trade up for Dieng in this year's draft. The Knicks were too. That's how the Knicks were able to hold them over a barrel and get 3 first-round picks for. So, as much as teams, but on the flip side, like, the Magic were successful in stuffing out everyone about Paolo Banchero. But, like, I still found out that they called him on Wednesday before the draft and, like, really, made a serious overture, and that Paolo's people were just not sold that they were actually being serious. So, like, still find out these things. It's a very it's a confined industry and ecosystem that, like, is an echo chamber, and you're going to hear about it at some point in time.
Going to finish up here with Jake Fischer in just 1 second. But before we do that, just want to tell you about the NFL's top 50 players, which we're running all week long over on the Locked On NFL channel. Which NFL stars move the betting lines the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at Bet Online. Available July 18th on the Locked On NFL podcast or on YouTube, wherever you get those podcasts. Subscribe. It's free wherever you go. Is the Locked On NFL's top 50 most valuable players, brought to you by Bet Online. The steamroller of the transaction industrial complex is unstoppable. It's just a fact of life. Want to close off on this, Jake. So you wrote a book, Tanking to the Top, but the Sixers in the process, and all that was caught up in that. And it does, I think, tie back to what we were talking about off the top of the show regarding the sort of out of whack trade market. To me, the way things have progressed is sort of like the logical endpoint of like a process era NBA where lots of teams are trying to do this thing where they tank to the bottom, hoard all the picks, and by the time that all happens, you have like 6 teams that have all the picks for the next 6 years or whatever it is. You have like numbers of picks being dealt out for stars that are like illegal for most teams to even send out. You need to have the hoard to be able to even be part of these conversations in some cases, like the Donovan Mitchell one, it seems. I'm curious, Jake, how does the market ever reset? Like, is there going to be a moment, do you think, where it does reset? So, a Kevin Durant trade negotiation doesn't become more complex by the fact that Rudy Gobert got traded for everything the Wolves have ever had and will have. Like, is there a logical sort of correction coming, or is it just going to spiral? So the only teams that can make these star trades are the teams that have everyone's picks, 3 different teams' pick futures kind of all in their coffers for the next 5 years. Like, where do you think this goes? Because it does feel like it could be a thing that starts to stagnate the star trade market if like most teams don't even have the stuff. And then a lot of the teams like the Thunder who have all the picks maybe aren't incentivized to go trade for guys because A, maybe they can't keep them there, or B, they're just content to keep running it back and winning 25 games and getting more high picks because some people are freaks for high picks. Where are you at with the sort of possibility of a correction, and how do you think that could look?
Yeah. Just real quick, my book's called Built to Lose. Yaron Weitzman's
Oh my God, I'm the worst. I'm the worst.
It's all
I'm just
good.
the worst. My
Yaron's
God.
book is a great book, so big shout out to Yaron too.
I've had Yaron on the podcast too. That's why I had taken to the top in my head. I'm a moron. I'm just a big moron, Jake.
All good, man. Don't worry about it. I just wanted to be clear for our listeners here. Go support Yaron's book as well, but if you want to buy my book, mine's called Built to Lose. To answer your question, look, the league does operate cyclically, and there needs to be, just like, DeJounte Murray's trade was really what started this thing because he went for 2 unprotected and 3 first. And, then I think that had an impact on Rudy Gobert. So we just need one event to change everything back. And because, I can tell you from my experience talking to people and, really seeing it unfold in real time, sometimes from conversations on both sides of the deal, precedents and comparisons really do matter. When Keldon Johnson signs a 4-year, $74 million contract with $6 million in incentives, that's now a data point that agents and teams are going to have for DeAndre Hunter, for Grant Williams, for other negotiations on the table. Same thing for trade valuations. When Aaron Gordon goes for RJ Hampton and a first-round pick and expiring and veteran salary, like that's a young player and a first-round pick. It's no coincidence that becomes the Pistons asking price for Jeremy Grant a year later. So all it takes is, the market is going to get capped out at a certain point. Like, there are only so many teams that actually have so many picks to go and trade for these guys. But then again, if Utah or OKC decides to throw 5 picks at a guy at some point down the line in the next 3-4 years, then it'll be out of whack again. So the market's going to always be fluctuating, is I guess my point. And it's going to be dependent on recent history, but also the executives at play. Because at the end of the day, just like when you're in a fantasy football or fantasy basketball league, like there are certain owners in your league that he's going to ask for less or he's going to ask for higher. There's a human element involved here too. Like,
right.
Danny Ainge is a different, trader than Sam Presti, than Leon Rose, than Pat Riley, than down the line. So it really is a collection and combination of factors of timing and who's involved and, where a player is at in their contract, how old they are. Everything is kind of like a fluid sliding scale.
Fascinating stuff, man. Really appreciate you taking the time. Really appreciate you not leaving after I misquoted the book that you wrote because I'm a moron. I promise I got it right in the tee up of the show. Just had your own on the brain, I
Don't feel
suppose.
bad about it. I just had the shill hat on and wanted to make sure that the dollars were coming to me. That's all.
Yeah. Buy both books, actually.
Buy
That's
both
the way
books.
to go about it. Yeah.
Rowan did a really deep dive on Philly. Mine's got a lot of stuff on Philly, Boston, Phoenix, Orlando, Cleveland, Milwaukee. I mean, a lot of teams around the league. Like if you're an NBA fan and like the stuff I'm doing now, you're gonna find out way more because it happened in the past and people are willing to talk about it more then. And if you hate anonymous sourcing, I want to think that my anonymous sourcing is bullshit. Well, there's a lot of people on the record to find out. Maybe we'll even be able to guess who I'm talking to based off of a lot of the quotes in that book. So that's all
Awesome.
I'll say.
Everyone go pick it up. I'm going to pick it up before I head for my honeymoon next week, and I'm going to read it throughout the trip because that sounds like a great way to spend some time, baby. Either way, Jake, where else can people check out your awesome work and anything you'd like to plug in particular?
Yeah, I'm at BR. Got my podcast on Call-In. Please Don't Aggregate This, twice a week. And we got more things coming. So stay tuned, follow me, and you'll get all the stuff I'm working on. Thanks for having me, man. And congrats on the wedding and safe travel.
Thanks. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day. Go make your second listen Locked On NBA as they are covering everything going on, even in the offseason. There's plenty of stuff to dig into, plenty of rumors and scuttlebutt and speculation, all the stuff we love so much. So go check out Locked On NBA. And with that, we'll round up the show. We'll be back again on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.